The building was almost empty when Daniel Reed made the decision that would not let him sleep for 3 nights. Inside, the office felt colder than usual, too quiet. Daniel stood near the elevators, jaw tight. Mr. Alvarez, the janitor, held his mop with both hands like it was something steady in a shaking world. "I'm sorry," Daniel had said, though his voice carried more frustration than regret. "We're making cuts. Tonight's your last shift." The old man nodded once. No argument, no pleading, just a quiet, "I understand. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from." Daniel told himself it was business. The company was struggling, investors were impatient, numbers mattered, and Mr. Alvarez, who had worked there longer than most managers, was not a number Daniel could justify keeping. Still, something about the way the janitor placed his ID card on the desk lingered in Daniel's chest. It was dignity. That night, Daniel stayed late reviewing reports, convincing himself he had done the responsible thing. Outside, thunder rolled. Somewhere down the hallway, a trash bin toppled over, likely knocked by the wind. 3 days passed. On the third morning, Daniel arrived early. The office smelled faintly of lemon polish. Dust had already begun collecting along the baseboards. Coffee stains marked the breakroom counter. He noticed the small things now. In the supply closet, tucked behind a stack of unused printer paper, he found a worn brown notebook. The edges were soft from years of handling. His name was written inside the cover. Daniel frowned. He opened it casually at first, expecting a list of maintenance tasks or supply orders. Instead, he found dates, observations, notes written in careful handwriting. Leak above conference room reported twice, not fixed, server room overheating again dangerous. Daniel looked tired today, should remind him to rest. Daniel's breath caught, he flipped pages faster. There were detailed sketches of the building's wiring, notes about small electrical faults that could become serious, diagrams of aging pipes, even ideas, cost-saving suggestions, efficiency improvements, safety reminders. And then he found something that made his stomach drop, a page dated 2 weeks earlier. Smell of burning plastic near main breaker. Reported to maintenance email. No response, if ignored, could cause fire. Daniel's mind raced. He remembered that day. He had skimmed maintenance emails, overwhelmed, distracted. He closed the notebook slowly. For the first time in months, the numbers on his spreadsheets felt small, petty. The janitor he had dismissed as expendable had been quietly protecting the entire building, protecting him. A wave of unease washed over Daniel. What else had he ignored? That afternoon, during a routine inspection, a junior technician mentioned a faint electrical odor near the breaker panel, the same place described in the notebook. Daniel felt cold. He walked down to the basement himself. The air was thick and metallic near the breaker box. A thin black mark trailed along the wall, subtle, almost invisible. He imagined what might have happened if it sparked after hours. Paper-filled offices, locked doors, night staff unaware. The image tightened his throat. Suddenly, the firing didn't feel like a cost-saving decision. It felt reckless. That evening, Daniel sat alone in his office, the notebook open in front of him. Rain fell again, softer. This time, he replayed Mr. Alvarez's steady eyes, the way he had never asked for recognition, the way he had noticed everything. Daniel realized something uncomfortable. He hadn't fired the janitor because of numbers alone. He had fired him because he didn't see him, because it was easier to cut the quiet worker than question his own leadership. And that truth stung. The next morning, Daniel called an emergency maintenance team. The breaker issue was worse than it looked. Wires brittle, insulation thinning. A few more weeks, they said, and it could have turned serious, very serious. Daniel drove across town that afternoon, the notebook resting on the passenger seat like a silent witness. He found Mr. Alvarez's address in old HR records, a small house, faded blue paint, wind chimes clinking gently by the porch. When the door opened, the old man looked surprised but not resentful. Daniel held out the notebook. "You were protecting all of us," he said quietly, "and I didn't even know." Mr. Alvarez smiled faintly. "It was my job." "No," Daniel replied, voice tightening. "It was more than that." He offered him his position back, not out of guilt alone, but out of recognition, this time with a raise, with respect, with a seat at safety meetings where his notes would be heard, not hidden. Mr. Alvarez hesitated, not for pride, but for principle. "If I return," he said gently, "it's because you're willing to listen." Daniel nodded. "I am," and he meant it. When Mr. Alvarez walked back into the building days later, some employees barely noticed. But Daniel did. He noticed the steady footsteps, the careful eyes, the quiet presence that had always been there. only now it wasn't invisible. Leadership, Daniel learned, isn't about cutting costs in the dark, it's about seeing clearly in the light, because the people we overlook are often the ones holding everything together. Respect is not earned by titles, but by attention, and sometimes the smallest notebook carries the heaviest truth. If this story made you reflect on someone you've overlooked, tell us where you're watching from and share your thoughts below. And for more powerful stories about quiet strength and human growth, subscribe to Cinematic Whispers, where every whisper carries a lesson worth hearing.